Today, we're diving into the story of the Libertines, a band that for a moment there felt like the most important thing in the world. They were this brilliant, chaotic, and completely captivating mix of raw punk energy and incredible poetic ambition. But this isn't just a story about a band, it's about the myth they created and the myth they tried so desperately to live.
And this quote, this was a pact made between the two frontmen, Carl Barât and Pete Doherty. It just perfectly sets the stage for everything that followed. Right from the get-go, they knew the stakes were ridiculously high. There was no middle ground, no playing it safe. It was either going to be glorious victory or complete and utter oblivion. Honestly, it was a prophecy that would pretty much define their entire career.
And look at this. Here they are, still on stage in 2024. This is what's so amazing. The Libertines aren't some historical artifact we're digging up. They're a living, breathing thing. And that makes their story all the more incredible. It's not just about a spectacular flameout, it's about a hard-won, and somehow still ongoing, survival.
Okay, so to really get the Libertines, you first have to understand the dream that was fueling them. This was a romantic, almost storybook quest that went so much deeper than just, being in a rock band.
And that dream had a name, Arcadia. This was the central myth of the band. It was this idea of a lyrical utopia, a kind of pirate ship of the imagination they called the Albion, sailing towards a land free from all the boring rules of modern life. It was messy, it was poetic, and for them, it felt completely real. And you have to remember, for a whole generation of kids in Britain sick of the polished pop music that came after Britpop, this idea of a romantic, rebellious escape, it was absolutely intoxicating.
At the helm of this imaginary ship were two very, very different captains. On one side, you had Pete Doherty, the dreamy, romantic poet, obsessed with William Blake and the Smiths. And on the other side, you had Carl Barât, the scrappy, sharp-suited punk, channeling this dry Edwardian wit and the raw power of the Clash. It was this collision, this mashup of high-minded literature and street-level energy that created that unmistakable Libertines sound.
And wow, did that sound catch on. I mean, it caught on like wildfire. Their rise was just meteoric, completely fueled by these now legendary guerrilla gigs they'd throw in their tiny London apartment and a music press that just could not get enough of them.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you how ridiculously fast it all happened. In just over a year, they went from being complete unknowns to being crowned the best new band in the UK by the NME, which was a huge deal back then. Their debut album, Up the Bracket, produced by Mick Jones from The Clash, by the way, it became an instant classic. They were suddenly the undisputed leaders of a whole new wave of British guitar music.
But you know how these stories go. Just as quickly as they rose, the cracks started to show. The very same volatility that made their music so thrilling, well, that started to tear them apart from the inside.
This picture right here, it just captures the central contradiction of their entire story. To show their undying commitment to the band, to their dream, they both got this matching Libertine tattoo. And the ultimate tragic irony? This permanent symbol of their unbreakable bond was inked right at the very moment it was all about to shatter into a million pieces.
So what was the problem? Well, Pete Doherty's escalating addiction to crack and heroin became the central conflict. The creative partnership that was built on this beautiful shared dream was now just completely fractured by mistrust and the chaos of addiction. It drove this huge wedge between him and a really horrified Carl Barât.
And that conflict led to this, just a shocking sequence of events. Feeling like he'd been cast out of the band he helped create, Doherty broke into Carl's apartment. It was the ultimate betrayal. And it led directly to his arrest, and then a prison sentence. The dream of Arcadia, it was pretty much dead.
But then, in a twist that absolutely nobody saw coming, Carl was right there waiting for Pete the day he got out of prison. They hugged, and that very same night, they took the stage together for this legendary, emotional gig that the music press later called the Gig of the Year. It was just a staggering display of their complicated, messy, and seemingly unbreakable bond.
And here's the craziest part. Right in the middle of all this personal chaos, they became more successful than ever. Their second album, which they literally recorded with security guards in the studio to keep them from fighting, went straight to #1. The single Can't Stand Me Now, a brutally honest song about their falling out, became their biggest hit. It's just wild.
And then, just as they reached the absolute peak of their fame, it all ended. With Doherty still unable to escape his addictions, Carl finally made the heartbreaking decision to dissolve the band. The good ship Albion had officially sunk.
But of course, the story doesn't end there. It couldn't. For the next decade and beyond, the ghost of the Libertines would loom large, leading to a whole series of tentative, emotional, and sometimes triumphant reunions.
This timeline really visualizes their fractured history perfectly, doesn't it? You can see these huge gaps, years of silence, side projects, public drama, and then they're punctuated by these bright flashes of activity, where they tried to get the old ship sailing one more time.
And those reunions were huge. I mean, from these legendary festival appearances to a massive headlining show in London's Hyde Park, they proved that whatever that magic was, it was still there. They even managed to release 2 more albums, with their 2024 record hitting #1 in the UK, a full 20 years after their first one. Incredible. So why? Why does this story still resonate so deeply with so many people? Well, their legacy is about so much more than just a few great albums. It's about the enduring power of the myth they created.
When you get right down to it, their story is a love story. As this quote from a friend makes so clear, the core of the Libertines was always the intense, obsessive, and deeply codependent relationship between Pete Doherty and Carl Barât. That was the engine for absolutely everything: the good, the bad, and the beautiful. And even now, decades later, with all the turmoil hopefully behind them, Pete Doherty admits his creative drive is still aimed squarely at his old friend. It just confirms that the heart of the band, that entire romantic quest for Arcadia, was always about the powerful, complicated connection between these two people.
Which kind of leaves us with the big, unanswerable question about the Libertines. Was that explosive, volatile chemistry between them a tragic flaw that doomed them from the start? Or was it the essential, dangerous ingredient that was necessary to produce their legendary, timeless music? The truth, just like the band itself, is probably somewhere right in the middle.